Download the My Hingham app today and report issues and get information on town government with ease. Available on the App Store and Google Play. You can submit service requests or gain information with just a few taps on your phone. Using the My Hingham app puts immediate access to town resources in the palm of your hand, including calendars of meetings and events, agendas for upcoming meetings, building permit filing options, online bill payment options, and info about our boards, committees, departments, and services. For more information, please scan the QR code on your screen.
Good evening. It is March 18th, 2025. I am convening this meeting of the Hingham Select Board. This meeting is being held in person and or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is there anyone else recording? Seeing none, I will note for the record that participating this evening are Liz Klein, Bill Ramsey, and myself, Joe Fisher. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do not believe we have any minutes for approval this evening, so we will move on first to consider approval of the request of the Hingham Sports Partnership for a special one-day all-alcoholic beverages license for Hingham Sports Partnership Comedy Night 2025 to be held at the Loring Theater on April 6, 2025 from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And we are honored to have Ray Estes here. Right over there. Yeah, that's fine. And Ray, if you could just give us a brief summary of what's planned.
Sure. Ray Estes, 92 Fort Hill Street for Hingham Sports Partnership. This is an annual comedy night fundraiser that HSP brought back after a several-year hiatus 3 years ago. It's always been a very successful fundraiser for us, one of our major ones that we do each year. And it's a really fun night for folks in town. It's really an opportunity to get a night out on the town without having to go into Boston. You go to the Loring Theater, you see a professional comedy show. We have 3 Boston headliners again this year, different than last year. And then following that, it's a dinner at Tosca with essentially an open bar, not quite entirely, but mostly, and great food provided by Tosca. So it's a fun night. We're expecting a full house, as we usually do, and we look forward to it.
So your responsibility this evening was to lead with an opening joke for comedy night. Was anything you can...
Yeah, those who know me best know I don't have a sense of humor.
There you go. The capacity of 200 to 250, that's consistent. I've been there before, and that seems what.
Yeah, Dave Scott, who owns the theater, advised or confirms that I believe the capacity is 275. Years ago, when I attended, they pushed that number, maybe even exceeded it. Won't tell any fire department personnel that. But yeah, in the past years, I think we had 220 last year, 230 maybe the year before. It's always in that ballpark.
And I don't see that I don't recall there being a need for a police presence there.
That's really up to the chief. It's all contained inside the Loring Theater, and then folks go over to Tosca, whether they walk or they drive their own vehicles. Everything is contained inside the theater. Some years we've had a requirement for a police detail. Last year we did have a detail, but 2 years ago I called as instructed and nobody came. So we didn't have a detail that year, and I don't think we needed it. But that's the chief's discretion.
Great. Liz, any questions?
I see that the application is complete and Chief Jones signed off on it. I know it's a great event, so thank you for doing this, and it's a fabulous fundraiser. No questions.
Bill.
No questions. Comment. I was there last year. Great event. I got a reminder from Deb to. How come you haven't bought your ticket yet, Bill? Over the weekends, I'll be buying that this week.
Good.
And
I'm just going to remind you, Billy, that you were not there last year because it was your daughter's birthday.
No, that was 2 years ago. I was there last year. Yes, 2 years ago.
How old am I that I can't
April 3rd. It was on April 3rd.
All right.
April 6th. I can make it this year.
Well, we look forward to seeing you again, perhaps.
Yeah, be there.
Yes, and I did get my reminder call from Ray just to make sure I'd be there. Tom, anything you need to add?
Nope. Chief signed off on it, like Liz said.
Yes.
It's good.
Any member of the public with comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm prepared to take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the request of Hingham Sports Partnership Incorporated for a special one-day all-alcoholic beverages license for Comedy Night 2025 to be held at the Loring Theater on April 6, 2025 from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you very much. I just mention one thing, that in the past we've gotten just a malt and wine license, but with the kind of popularity of the seltzers, which sometimes have vodka, right? It came to me last year that, geez, maybe we should get the all alcoholic just in case to cover ourselves. So that's why it's different this year than in the past. So
Looking forward to it.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is to consider approval of the agreement with Waste Quip Manufacturing LLC for 2 stationary commercial trash compactors for the Town of Hingham transfer station. Ashley and David,
Hey, everybody.
how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good.
So this is our contract for replacing 2 of the compactors for down at the transfer station. We've used this company before, replacing 2 others, and they did a great job.
So the work is supposed to be done before the end of June, is that correct?
Yes, that's the plan.
And the total cost is just under $144,000.
Yes, sir.
And what is the useful life?
These are about 20, 25 years.
Okay. And I understand that the replacement is something that's you need to do.
Absolutely. The pistons on them wear down and they're just not able to compact the trash anymore, which means that we're not filling the containers to take them down to cities.
Was there bidding on this, David, or how did the process work for getting the contract?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Was there bidding on this, or how did that?
No, so this was an OSD contract through the state.
Okay.
So they provided a quote to Ashley for the 2, and then we went forward with it.
Great. Liz, any questions?
I know we've talked about this before, and I know it's a necessary capital project. Just to confirm, this is coming out of the FY25 capital budget?
Yes.
Okay. And was this within the budget that was set?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Bill.
And actually, these are the 2 compactors, 2 of the 4. It's a 4 that we've got for that kind of mixed use trash.
The large ones down, when you come do your household trash.
Is there a need or a plan for the other ones, or you think we can?
We're working with a system that me and Randy had kind of like started putting in motion, where the 2 compactors that are currently in place there, they're not completely at the end. We can still use it. We're going to use them for paper because it's not as much pressure that they need to be able to push the paper than it is to push full loads of trash. So we're actually taking out 2 of the paper ones that are at the end of their life. We're going to move them up there and put the new ones in place. So then we can get probably another 10, 15 years out of them in that place, and then we'll have the 20.
So they're pushed down the lane.
Yep.
That's a good plan to recycle, kind of recycle them.
Yeah.
Use them, and saving us having to buy the paper ones. So
Exactly.
Anything else?
that's it.
So the ones that are ultimately being replaced, what happens to them? The ones that are now at the bottom of the lane are being shoved out.
Those ones will be taken away.
Is there any residual value? Are they sold? I just don't know. What's the disposal process? Where I'm going is there any money coming into your budget as a result of disposal?
There is, yes. So there is like a, I'm drawing a blank. When you trade-in amount that we are getting, that trade-in amount that we're getting for those is going to cover the cost of the move of the compactors over.
Got it.
So it's not costing us additional money.
Okay. Sorry. Anyone in the public with questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm prepared for a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with Waste Quit Manufacturing Company, LLC, for 2 stationary commercial trash compactors for the town of Hingham transfer station in an amount not to exceed $143,970.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we move on to a discussion and possible votes on the 2025 annual town meeting warrant articles, beginning with Article AAA to amend the zoning bylaw update to accessory dwelling unit regulations. Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. So time for the least confusing portion of your evening. That was the joke that Ray neglected.
Exactly. You're now invited to the comedy night.
So luckily there are less zoning articles this year than last year. If you recall, there were quite a few, so a little bit more manageable. So the first article that the planning board moved forward is Article AAA, which is the update to the accessory dwelling unit regulations portion of the zoning bylaw. The driver for this article really is state driven. So the state issued regulations through the Affordable Homes Act back in this past summer, which required accessory dwelling units to be allowed by right in all municipalities in the state. It also authorized the Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities, or HLC, to issue additional regulations for towns to comply with. So they did do that in January. So you may note that the original article is different from what the final recommended article was from the planning board.
Yep.
So that's the reason for that. So I'll just read the intent of the article is to update Section 5K of the bylaw, which is the ADU section of the bylaw, to comply with the applicable sections of the statute. So it requires accessory dwelling units to be permitted by right, and it also updates other regulations within the bylaw in a reasonable manner that the state allows related to the development of ADUs. So you'll see on the slides that the sections that are going to be eliminated and actually currently are unenforceable are the special permit process. So the town can no longer require a special permit. Removal of the owner occupancy requirement. You can no longer require an owner to live in either the principal dwelling or the accessory dwelling unit. There's no longer a cap on the number that are allowed. So really any property can have one. And then it adjusts some additional definitions related to accessory dwelling units and then parking standards as well. Michelle, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Thank you. Thank you. So like I mentioned, the current bylaw most of it is unenforceable right now because or I shouldn't say most, but a large portion of it is unenforceable because it's not consistent with the state regulations. So if this article were not adopted, residents would see this section in the bylaw and have to determine what is compliant and what is not with state statute, which is gymnastics to go through. So doing this would provide additional, or I should say better guidance for residents, and just a better working document than having something that doesn't comply with the statute. And what else do I want to mention about this? The planning board also wanted to include a few additional regulations that are permissible, we believe, that are not unreasonably regulating accessory dwelling units, which would not, if this article were not adopted, those additional regulations would not be in place. So,
Are any of those dealing with the short-term rentals?
Yes. So short-term rentals, the state defines those as a rental period less than 30 days. So there is a new definition that is proposed to go into this section of the bylaw that refers to the state's definition. So the proposed definition in the Hingham bylaw essentially mirrors or would mirror the state. So there is would be the term limit of a minimum of 30 days.
Okay. Anything else on this before we move on?
I think so.
Okay, so we're not voting on these. That's being presented to us.
Yes.
And I know that at prior town meetings, ADUs have been controversial, to say the least.
Yes.
And to a large extent, the town's regulations have been preempted by the state regulation.
That's correct.
So
Yeah.
to the extent that there was controversy, I think it's now gone. Was there any controversy at the planning board level? Is this a unanimous resolution?
So this was not a unanimous vote on this one.
Okay.
3 in favor, 1 opposed, and then 1 abstention. I'll just note that the votes not in favor were more of a request to just, instead of providing all of the updates to these regulations, and simply putting a note to say, refer to Mass General Law XYZ with the applicable section. The majority of planning board felt that would be doing a disservice to the public, because then staff would be getting calls all the time to try to guide people through the regulations, or residents would just have to figure out on their own what is applicable and what's not.
Great. Liz, any questions?
No questions. Thank
Bill?
you.
No, I think, as you mentioned, Joey, it was a very robust debate at town meeting regarding this article. I think there's only been 1 or 2 detached.
Yeah. So
Right.
there's been
I know of 1.
That's right.
I think it might have been a second one too.
There's been 3 applications since 2023,
3.
which is when the detached ADUs were approved. In total, there are about 21 in the town, I believe, since adoption in 2018. So there's only been a handful. And like I said, since 2023, when the detached were allowed, there's only been just a couple.
Nothing else.
Okay, well, let's move on then to Article CCC.
Okay. So this article is the exemption for lots or structures affected by takings. This article was proposed by the planning board, and the intent is to create exemptions for under Section 3I of the bylaw that would allow structures to be maintained if new or intensified dimensional nonconformities resulted on the lot from a governmental take. And this would be allowed by a special permit, with the exception of certain single and 2-family dwellings. So basically this article, and I should mention that it was amended during the hearing process to include, and you'll see on this slide, the additional paragraph B. So item 1 first places this exemption within Section 3I of the bylaw, which is the nonconformity section. Mm-hmm. And then item 2 kind of takes it a step further and explains the process. So any structure, so I'll just provide an example because that's helpful. Let's say you have a single family dwelling on a lot in Residence District A, which requires 25 feet from the front yard as the front yard setback. If there was a governmental taking on that lot, which resulted in a 23-foot setback. That dwelling is now considered non-conforming with respect to the front yard setback because those 2 feet were taken. This currently, if they wanted to change the structure in any way, so if they wanted to tear it down and rebuild it, they would not be allowed to do that in the same location because there is no exemption for governmental takings. What this process allows is that if your lot is affected by a governmental taking, you don't have to apply for a variance, essentially. And you can still take advantage of the same setback that you had before, whatever the dimensional nonconformity is, for something that was not the result of your own doing. So it requires a special permit for any structure other than a single or 2-family dwelling. So that would be an accessory structure on a lot, like a detached garage, or a non-residential use, essentially.
So this deals with essentially involuntary non-compliance situations.
Yes.
I really don't have any questions on this. Liz?
No questions. Thank you.
Bill?
That makes perfect sense. I mean, to force someone to have to apply for a variance, not because of their own
Right.
action, makes great sense. I'm surprised we haven't done this earlier.
Yeah, it was shocking to us
Yeah.
as well.
An involuntary nonconformance makes sense that this is the proper way to address it.
Yeah.
Let's go on to Article Triple D.
Okay. So this article is truly a cleanup article. So there's nothing really that changes about the bylaw other than we believe this was either just a scrivener's error or an oversight when the bylaw was changed in prior years. So Section 5B of the bylaw is the signage portion of the bylaw, which is administered by the zoning board and the zoning office. So the purpose of this article is to make 2 corrections. In item 1, you'll see it says, by replacing the reference to section 4C6, that section 6, that subsection 6 speaks to exempted lots. Footnote 3, which actually applies to both of these items, within section 5B, is the schedule of signage regulations with respect to setbacks. And exempted lots really have nothing to do with setbacks. The reference was supposed to be for 4C7, which is related to corner lot clearance, which is related to setbacks. So whatever the change was in prior years, it's supposed to say 7, not 6. Item 2 would change this is again under footnote 3 of section 5B. There is no section 5B6E. It doesn't exist. It's supposed to be section 5B10E. So just a couple of...
This is a clear cleanup.
Yes. And it's obviously not an easy thing to explain.
Yes. But you did it well.
Yes.
Liz, any questions?
No questions on that.
Bill?
No questions.
Then we'll move on.
All right. So these last 2 articles are actually zoning board articles. So they were proposed by the zoning board. This first one is the extension or alteration of non-conforming uses and structures. The intent of this article is to require a special permit A1, which are administered by the zoning board, for the extension or alteration of pre-existing non-conforming structures or uses, as defined under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, which is a part of the Zoning Act. So doing so would allow the Zoning Board of Appeals to utilize this special permit criteria and add conditions to the permit if they deem that they are needed. So there is a kind of informal process like this right now that doesn't totally match up with with Chapter 48, Section 6. It's called a finding, and the zoning board will issue those in certain instances of non-conforming conditions. This came up most recently with a project that's currently underway on Route 3A. It's a golf simulator building, and they needed to get a finding from the zoning board to continue the use of that site as the non-conforming use because it's in a residential district. This process would formalize the procedures and create an actual application process for these types of applications. They don't come up very frequently, but instead of there just being some sort of a hearing with this gray area that has kind of always been done, this would allow the zoning board to add conditions to these permits and actually provide a process for applicants with clear procedures and criteria for what is actually required.
So basically, it would be findings with conditions. So it's rather than trying to sneak those conditions into the finding,
yes,
it would be a clear permit process, which makes a lot of sense.
This is the only type of application that there isn't like a formal procedure for outlined in the zoning bylaw. So it would fall under one of those procedures, which would be the special permit. This would not apply to those single and two family dwellings that currently have the Hatfield exemption, I should say.
Okay. I get it. Liz?
Yeah, makes sense to standardize that process. Thank you.
Bill?
Makes sense.
Okay, let's go on.
All right. And the last one is, again, submitted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's expiration of cell tower special permits. Really, the intent of this article is to eliminate there's currently a 5-year expiration period for cell tower applications, which doesn't exist for any other type of special permit. So if a cell tower is permitted, they right now have to return to the zoning board to renew their permit after 5 years. This article would eliminate that procedure because it's an equity thing, A, and an efficiency thing, B. No other permit is treated this way, and it doesn't really add much to the process to make them return.
But to the extent that we want to make sure that the cell towers remain in working order and that there are no issues affecting the neighbors, the zoning boards can still do that without requiring reapplication for the permit, basically having a look back period that they can come in and report if needed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's always an option if they want to add a condition and to say you have to return in maybe even 3 years to ensure that things are continuing, or they could say like, upon complaint or something, you need to return. Something like that.
I'm not aware of complaints, but it's certainly something that I know the zoning board in the past has looked at. This board is all about making sure that we get better cell service for the community. So to the extent that the current regulation has created problems, looking to address those problems. So thank you for doing that. Liz, any questions?
Yes, agreed. This sounds like it removes one obstacle to us getting better cell service. So thank you.
Yeah.
No impediments, please. Bill?
Yeah, agree with everything said. No questions at all. Thank you.
Great. That's it.
Great.
Thank you. Really appreciate
it.
Yeah, great
what you've
job.
done here. And not just you, I know.
Good seeing you.
It's a group. So thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you as well.
Okay, we now move on to updated article, our high school roof replacements. I don't know if is Ness available or is it going to be Katie, Aisha? Who would you like to be your chief spokesperson? Please come on up.
Good evening, everybody.
Welcome.
Katie Roberts, 13 Longmeadow Road. I'm superintendent of the Hingham Schools.
Aisha Bong, 530 Hill Road. I don't think I've ever had to.
Yes, I know.
I didn't want to feel left out.
You don't. So if you just make sure the mics are close to you so that we can get the recording. So please tell us what is updated about this.
Yeah, so first just wanted to express our thanks to the Select Board and our municipal partners for all of their support throughout this process. We are thrilled to be moving forward with our MSBA application this week. Thank you to Aisha and her team for working on that. And we do have some updates for you this evening on our roof warrants.
So in terms of, similar to what we've discussed earlier, the current roof warrants are for schematic designs for the high school roof. The high school roof includes schematic designs for the roof replacement and HVAC replacements on the roof, as well as the Plymouth River School and South Elementary School roof schematic designs and feasibility for those roof replacements.
So is Article R designed to be consistent with MSB requirements that if we get approved, this vote at town meeting would be sufficient to allow us to proceed with the MSBA?
Yes. MSBA's legal team have reviewed those articles as well, provided feedback. So what you have is the updated version of those articles.
And Article R is, at this point, I believe it's just the high school roof.
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
And there is, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no dollar amount in Article R itself.
Right.
That's something that'll come out of the recommended motion from AdCom.
And the recommended motion has also been reviewed by MSBA as well. So that will be included in there, and we're working with advisory on the comments.
And if we don't get accepted by MSBA, what happens with Article R?
In terms of the Article R, it mentions that with MSBA, the amount that the town would have to fund depends on the amount of the funding from MSBA. So our assumption here is that if we would get zero funding from MSBA, then we would have to pay the full amount of the schematic designs.
Yes. Liz, any questions?
Thank you, Aisha. I know this, and Katie, this has been a tremendous amount of work, and I think we're all trying to work with the best information we have in front of us, and it's changing moment by moment. So appreciate everybody's hard work and patience. Just to reiterate, I don't think anyone from the public was at our last meeting. So just wanted to kind of say out loud, obviously we want to move forward with the MSBA project. If we are not accepted, which we will find out in the fall, late fall, then we will move forward as a town with this project.
That's right.
Correct?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill.
And I talked about this last week, but just for those who weren't here, Liz made a good point. So the timeline would be, if we are accepted, the funding request would either be through a special town meeting after spring of 26 or spring of 27. Is that correct?
So
Yeah.
let me just be clear. The funding for the schematics would be this town meeting. The funding
Correct,
for construction would be for the following.
Yes. Yeah. Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Any member of the public? Comments or questions? Then I am prepared to accept the motion on Article R.
I make a motion to recommend favorable action on the updated Article R.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. We can then move on to Article QQ, which is the Plymouth River School Roof Schematic Design. So give us an update.
And similar to the high school, except that this article doesn't include anything for HVAC. This is just an article asking for schematics for the Plymouth River Elementary School.
And where is Plymouth River School roofs in terms of priorities? I know the high school roof is at the top of the list. Where is this in terms of priorities for capital projects for the school?
Plymouth River would be number 2 in terms of priority. The high school being number 1, particularly the area of the Plymouth River roof that is flat. We've had to make some significant repairs, done some significant repairs on that roof as well. So that one would be definitely number 2 in terms of its age. Some of parts of the roof are also original to the building, in that it's probably was done last in the 60s maybe. We aren't even able to identify what the age of some parts of the roof really is.
And for Plymouth River, are you also talking about the RTUs as you were in the high school? It's just the roof itself?
Just the roof.
Liz, any questions?
So what has been updated? Is it the MSBA approved language?
The MSBA approved language.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, no other questions.
Bill,
No questions.
any member of the public, comments or questions on Article QQ? If not, I'm prepared for motion.
I will make a motion to recommend favorable action on the updated Article QQ.
Second.
Roll call vote. Bill,
Aye.
Liz,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. We then move to Article RR, which deals with the South School roof schematic design.
Similar to PRS in that the only difference being that with South, this roof would be considered number 3 in our priority, but we're also looking at trying to get schematic and feasibility funding from town meeting this year. That feasibility that will be done as part of the MSBA process, if we were to get accepted, would determine whether it would be a repair of the roof or full replacement as part of the feasibility information. So we consider that information to be valid information in terms of how we move forward with the South roof as well.
So if we do the schematics for South and then it turns out we're not accepted with the MSBA for this roof, and it turns out that the schools elect or the town elects not to proceed for another 2 years, will these schematics still be of use?
In terms of MSBA's process is very specific.
No, I'm assuming there's no MSBA, that we're going to have to do the roofs ourselves.
Right. So we could move forward with our own. If we did wait 2 years, we could reapply for MSBA. So I think if we had to wait 2 years, we would do that as well. One of the things that we're also looking at is that we'll also look at once we get the feasibility is done, is there an option for repair?
Right.
And the costing for repair as well. So that will be a decision that we would make in terms of evaluating the information coming from the feasibility and schematic designs as well.
So am I correct that doing this analysis does not necessarily commit us really to doing the construction? It's giving us the options, if you will.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yes.
Liz, any questions?
So just to clarify, so the feasibility study is included in all of the articles and will be done at each school.
And it's a requirement of MSBA as well that we perform a feasibility study to determine whether we replace or repair, and whether the roofs evaluate solar readiness as well, or ability to include solar on the roofs as part of the process.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm prepared to accept a motion on Article RR.
I will make a motion to recommend favorable action on the updated Article RR.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Before we go on, let me just see something here. So,
Done this one.
yeah, so Tom, are we voting? So these articles, there's 2 paragraphs here. The top one is the article, and then what is below there, which is HHS motion.
An explanation.
So this is not.
It's a likely motion that AdCom will move forward.
Okay, so this is not our motion.
That's right. That's
So-
for AdCom, so you know what AdCom is likely to do.
Okay, so we're not. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's a motion that AdCom would submit that's within the scope of the MSBA requirements.
Right. So, for example, for the high school, I should have seen this before. The motion below refers to using unassigned fund balance. That's not something that we just voted on.
No, that's something AdCom will do.
Okay.
And to add to that as well, MSBA provides the option for the language, in terms of what it could be, in terms of whether it be reserve fund transfers or in terms of any other funding.
So it could be funded by debt as well as by transfer fund.
Option.
Okay.
Yeah, your vote was purely the upper part,
The article.
only.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
So I guess So why is this even here? It's not, if it's not before the board, why?
Because I think they're just, they gave us documents for you.
Oh, okay.
Same document.
This is from the school committee, is what this is the ask of the meeting.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense. All right. I'll make clear.
Got it. Okay, because those motions also refer to the 2017 School Building Committee, which is now Article VV. So if you could explain what Article VV is about.
So as part of the Article VV, we're asking for the 2017 School Building Committee that their roles be expanded to include review of the roofs. It's one of those things that we would need to get town meetings approval on in order to move forward with the building committee expanding its role.
And to what extent has this been discussed with the building committee?
Well, the building committee has it on their agenda for tomorrow for discussion. So we'll get more information to them on that one as well.
So if it has not been considered by the building committee, is it premature for us to be voting on this?
In terms of that, what the school committee considered was that it's a case of roles rather than roles versus personnel. The building committee would, in itself, as a committee, could take on those additional tasks. The question of discussion would be at tomorrow's meeting would be whether the personnel would be willing to work as part of the committee going forward.
Well, the discussion could be broader than that. For example, the building committee is I think, still doing work on Foster. Yeah. There may be other work that they're doing. So part of the discussion is whether or not this fits in with what the current committee is doing, whether or not you may need a new committee to deal with the roofs. So this is not just personnel, but it's the mission of the committee itself.
Right. So right now the committee is working on Foster and is wrapping up the PRS column and windows and doors project. So the school committee at least thought it would be reasonable in terms of and these are both MSBA projects that are that the experience of the committee has. The committee has reviewed as part of their experience as well. So they thought it would be a natural fit to add on those additional roles. But we're hoping that based on the expertise and of that committee, that the personnel will also agree to join the committee as well and continue in that capacity.
Got it. Well, it so happens we have a member of the committee right here. Ray Estes, was there anything you'd like to add to this? And if so, the mic is up there.
It's a good time for a joke.
Like I said,
as we know, sense of humor.
That was it. That was
right.
my one. Ray Estes, 92 Fort Hill Street, Vice Chair of the 2017 School Building Committee. So as Aisha mentioned, our committee has not discussed this at all. The formal request was made to Linda Hill, the chair, and myself after the school committee meeting a week ago, Monday, after they had already voted to presumably add our oversight to those articles. So we asked for it to be on the agenda tomorrow night. We will discuss it. I will say that, we were appointed at town meeting in 2017 before there was a Foster project to work on. However, we did appropriate money at that town meeting for feasibility in advance of an acceptance to the MSBA, which came 2 years later. That's one of two times in history that I've found that we have actually voted to appropriate money for projects prior to an acceptance from the MSBA when one was sought. The first time was 2006, and the second was 2017. I don't know whether the current makeup of the committee would be interested in staying on to take on these projects. It's unclear if the work will begin right away, or it'll wait until an invitation might or might not be forthcoming. We're almost 8 years in now. Foster, the project at Foster will be completely done by September, and there'll probably be a year or so of closeout where we'll meet infrequently. The PRS project is complete, and it's now in the hands of the OPM to handle closeout. So there's really not anything for us to do on that any longer. So it really depends on the rest of the committee. I don't know that I'm interested in taking on additional school projects, which may have an undetermined time period or length. I've been doing this a while. My kids are older now, but we'll talk about it. On the issue of personnel versus the committee itself, I will say that if no one on the committee is really interested in pursuing this, then it seems like you need a new committee with a new charge that's authorized to take on these projects. And I think the projects need to be defined. We don't have projects yet. We're asking for schematic design funds and feasibility money in advance of an MSBA invitation, which typically doesn't happen, and the MSBA actually frowns upon, because if they do invite us into the program, they're going to make us do that work all over again. So some of this, I'm sorry to say, some of the money that gets appropriated for this work may have to be, we may have to do the work over again.
So just to be clear, the appropriation at this upcoming town meeting in advance of MSBA is a process that was discussed and cleared with the MSBA legal folks in order to accelerate our ability to move forward. There is no intention to spend any of that money until we know if we're in a MSBA, so there'd be no wasted work. So I think we've covered both of those concerns. My concern is whether or not this article is appropriate, or whether or not it should be expanded to say the 2017 School Building Committee or such other committee as may be formed to handle the project, so that it may not be your committee. And I think the school committee is thinking that if no one on the current committee wants to do the work, well, they can just put on different folks and still keep the name. My thought is that there may be some lingering work that needs to be done on Foster or whatever, so that you may have, if you will, two parts to the committee, which makes it complicated. And so it may be your suggestion of a new committee could just make it a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense when we added the PRS project to Foster. It made sense to do it at the time. The Foster group was formed specifically to have, at the time, parents of some Foster students who had certain expertise and involvement, and then others who brought certain expertise and involvement to bear on that group. The addition of PRS was kind of right in, when we were breaking ground on Foster. It took longer than we thought. We thought it was going to be done in one summer, and it ended up taking 2 years to complete. But it was while we were, knee deep in Foster work, right. So it made sense to do it rather than to have some other. I will say that, when the issue of the column repair came to light, when we were finishing up the door and window aspect of the PRS project, we were able to use funds left over in the budget for that, but we didn't do it kind of in concert with the MSBA, because the MSBA wasn't going to support that in any way. So Matt Meehan, the new facilities director, actually oversaw the column repair aspect of that project almost entirely on his own, reported to us, and we made certain decisions, but really not that many. With respect to roof projects, and HVAC as well in the high school, but roof projects are pretty straightforward. When you're talking about schematic design, feasibility, you're really just talking about, are you going to replace the roof? Yeah. And what kind of roof is it going to be? Or are you going to repair the roof? And then how are you going to do that? It's really not as complex as a door and window project. It's not as complex as building a new school. I'm not sure that a whole committee would be necessary for it. Maybe it would. Maybe it's a different structure of oversight. Maybe an individual, maybe a couple of people. Maybe I just don't know the answer to that. I talked with Lindy about it. We couldn't commit to this. We're going to discuss it tomorrow night. And maybe your idea is a good one to expand the language in the article to address a potential other structure.
Great. Thank you. Liz, any questions?
Well, thank you, Ray, for all you've done in the 2017 School Building Committee. Certainly, it's been many years and a tremendous amount of work, and don't want anyone to feel voluntold, but appreciate the expertise. Is having a School Building Committee established a requirement of the MSBA?
It is not.
It is not. Okay. And I understand, it might not be the same people. I guess my concern is if we change this, the other articles that we just voted specifically mention under the direction of the 2017 Hingham School Building Committee.
You're exactly right.
So just one more question and then we can try to tackle that. If we have if it's still called 2017 School Building Committee, but none of the current members want to continue to serve, does the school committee then appoint the people? And that doesn't have to go to town meeting. That would just happen after. Okay.
No?
No? Oh,
No, please.
Hi. Jen Benham, Vice Chair of the School Committee, 300 Gardner Street, my address. So just when the school committee voted on this on Monday night, obviously, as we talked about earlier, it's our impression that it would be the same title of the committee, but could very well be all different people, because in that 2017, when they voted on it at town meeting, it listed the appointees. I think it was 2 select board appointees for certain people. I think it was 1 appointee by the school committee that I can't remember the exact language. But they wouldn't be all appointed by the school committee. Right. It's very clearly laid out in the warrant article.
Moderator,
right.
Board, and
right. So the authority, there's specific authority as to who gets to appoint, but
Correct.
There's not. The town meeting's not saying Ray Estes is on the committee.
Correct.
Right.
And there have been over the years a few changes to the committee to the committee.
Got it.
Okay. That's all.
So I think part of what Ray was suggesting is that for this project, you may not need a committee of that size, and town meeting may want to say, well, perhaps there should be different appointments or different authorities to appoint. So I guess before I go on, I should ask Bill if you had any questions.
Yeah, well, the article VV does say the town authorize but not require the expansion of the role of the 2017 School Building Committee. So the non-requirement certainly allows the school committee some room there about how they want to proceed on it. Liz's point about the other articles falling under the direction of the 2017 building committee is a little problematic, but I think the 2017 school committee, I'm assuming, wants to see these projects through. I mean, I don't think probably anybody on that committee wants to go until Foster's done, right? So I'm gonna draw an inference that given the work you've done and the great work you've done, you're probably going to see that through. If they want to take on the additional tasks of now the roofs, I think what would happen was the name would stay 2017. This is to honor the intent, I think, of what the school committee is trying to do. So the name would stay the same, but it could be all new members. So I think it's fine. And we have committees all the time that roll over, through people on committees that constantly change in and out, but the name of the committee stays the same. So, I mean, my concern, I know the current members were appointed in 2017, but I don't think there's any legal problem with them calling it 2017, but having new members on the committee. So I think it's probably fine. It probably should be worded a little differently, but the problem is what Liz pointed out, the other articles put it under 2017.
And I think the point I was trying to articulate is that there may be ongoing work of the 2017 committee with respect to the Foster School, for example.
While this one's going on.
While this one's going on. So that's why you may need
Yeah.
Either you're splitting that committee in two, or actually it may be a new committee. Tom, you're about to say something.
Yeah, I just want to let everyone know I did speak with town council about this yesterday, and he let us know that if a motion were moved by AdCom, for instance, that replace this article with a more generic language for a new building committee and not the 2017 school building committee, then that would be within the scope of the original article.
Okay.
So, if the motion would be in the scope, with that type of motion would be within the scope of the original article. So I just asked him to join us if he's able to.
So I guess what you're saying, Tom,
coming in now.
It's the school committee could have two school building committees. You could have a 2017 and 2025.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You would just call the 2025.
Right.
The 2017 committee sees Foster through and the other work gets done. And then 2025 takes on the roofs.
I think the question becomes the language in the other articles that you guys just adopted. Does that need to change? Is that John's coming in now?
Yeah. Okay. I think we can handle that.
I think it's in the scope.
Okay. All right.
So I see Carrie, you wanted to add something? I can't.
I don't think.
Oh, it's the language below her. I'm sorry. It's the transcription. So I'm suggesting for Article VV, which is the one currently before us, that it be the town, and we've got to figure out how to word this, that it's our intention with Article VV that the recommended motion allow the expansion of the role of the 2017 School Building Committee or such other committee as may be approved by a town meeting to pursue and oversee and execute the replacement. So that it gives flexibility for town meeting to say 2017 or 2025 committee, or quite frankly, you may elect not to have a committee.
But the only concern would be the language in the other article.
Right. Well, so let's.
Right. So I like that suggestion.
Okay,
I think that's a good one.
So let's deal with Article VV first, and then we can go back.
Okay.
So I would say that for.
Why don't you make the motion?
Can I just ask a question before you make the motion? So with what you're proposing, Joe, if it is, well, do we still specify the appointees by whom? So does that structure, the two by the moderator, two by the select board, does that stay?
So what I spoke with John about that exact question, and he suggested that to keep it within the scope and within the spirit of the scope of the original article, then forming the new committee the same way you would have formed the 2017 committee is more, again, keeping within the spirit and the scope.
Now, since Article VV is not currently in the warrant itself, we would have to open the warrant.
Yes.
Do we have the ability to open the warrant with a modification of VV as I've just described?
100%. Yes.
Are you at school?
And John is on the computer now.
Okay, but are any concerns with us going as I suggested?
No, thank you. And again, we appreciate all the work the building committee has done. Our reason for pursuing the potential of continuing the building committee is because the Plymouth River repair project was part of the same accelerated repair program. And so we were just making an assumption that it would be a helpful task. I do understand Ray's point that the roof project may be somewhat simpler, maybe not the HVAC as much, but where it is part of the same accelerated repair program, we made an assumption that this would be a helpful resource for us.
And they may need a vacation.
And I completely understand that it has been a long road, and again, very grateful for all of the expertise and work that they've done.
If I can just add one point, because of the language we're adopting right now on the fly has legal significance with the MSBA, do we want to just wait and make sure we lay it out correctly?
So
I can follow up on that.
So it does the school building committee charge, is that an MSBA language? Or is this your language?
So in terms of the 2017 building committee, that's our add-on language. It could be the 2017 school committee, building committee, or the school committee. We just need to include in the article who would be the governing body of that project.
Okay. But with respect to this Article VV, which is basically expanding the charge of the school building committee, is that MSBA language or is that your language? So I think your concern, which is important, that we not go astray from
We
what
don't muddle
MSBA
it
needs.
up.
Right.
This is
Because, John's going to give us his opinion on scope, but ultimately the scope is the
Moderator.
purview of the moderator.
Right.
It's not town council, even though John's usually right, almost always right, but it is a decision of the moderator, not us or town council.
So I think you said, though, Aisha, before that this is not a requirement of the MSBA.
Right.
It's not.
So if we did wait a week, it does not. The school building committee is voting tomorrow. So is AdCom trying to vote on it tonight?
They really, I know, so AdCom really wants to vote on this tonight. I know
Yes.
that, but it's our obligation to get it right. Right. So let's see what John has to say.
I think AdCom may have voted. They may have voted on this one because it was a non-monetary one. I think.
okay.
I think they.
So you're voting. When is the your committee meeting? I know tomorrow. Tomorrow evening. 6:30. Okay.
So, and people at home probably didn't hear that. So AdCom is not voting on these articles this evening, and the 2017 School Building Committee is meeting tomorrow, Wednesday at 6:30 p.m.
So I think, Bill, your point would be that there's no rush or no reason to vote on this evening.
No, I think we should get it right. And, I think we need to go back and figure out the language in the previous articles and this one before we move it forward, if there's no rush to do it this evening.
John, any thoughts? John Coughlin?
Yeah, so what's the question, Joe, just so I understand what the issue is?
So we have before us Article VV, the School Building Committee charge. School Building Committee has not yet taken this up as to whether or not they want to expand their charge, take on the project, or whether or not it may be appropriate to have a different committee that's running, if you will, in tandem with this committee. This committee, for example, focusing on the 2017 continuing on foster, the new 2025 committee now dedicated to the roofs. So is it appropriate for us to address the Article VV this evening, or are we better off deferring that until after we hear from the 2017 School Building Committee as to their interests?
So the way the warrant article is written now, it says it's under the direction of the 2017 Hingham School Building Committee, right?
Correct.
And you want to change that to a new committee? Is that the thought? If they don't want to carry forward?
I think, at least my thought is that there's an option. It could be the 2017, or it could be a new committee, or it could be
The school committee.
or whatever committee the school committee might designate. Just expanding it and not limiting it. I don't see a downside in us voting that this evening, regardless of what happens with the 2017 School Building Committee.
Well, one other issue, John, that you're not aware of, the previous articles we voted tonight put the
specifically
the
mentioned
onus on the 2017 Hingham School Building Committee. So that is the problem. It's so rubbing up against that committee that may or may not take this on with the language we have before us now.
So we can go back and modify what we did this evening because we have not yet adjourned. So we can certainly address it, but the question is, what's the correct way to address it? So example, Article R, let's be specific, which is for the high school roof, which specifically says money to be expended under the direction of the 2017 Hingham School Building Committee. So if in fact it's not going to be that committee, it would be appropriate for us to modify this to say, or some other committee as may be designated by town meeting or by the school committee, something like that.
I would be fine two ways. One is what you just said, Joe, or other committee as designated by town meeting, and you leave it up to AdCom's motion would control at that point.
Yep.
The other way, frankly, I mean, remember, the warrant article is just a question, right? So the warrant article is, does town meeting want to do this and have this committee run it? I still think town meeting, it's not my determination. Ultimately, that's Mike Puzo's, but I still think that is within the scope of the article if the town meeting or the advisory committee wanted to recommend another group to manage this project. But if you're still in the